Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. What we want to do today, in collaboration with Sesh Sandy and his mortgage team, we want to look at the evolution of rent and rental cost in the GTA. We picked Mississauga and Toronto as our examples here, but this can be applied to any other city in the GTA or like in any other province to see what was the impact. But we want to break down this conversation between first-time home buyers and real estate investors. Any questions, mortgage-related questions, please redirect that to Sesh Sandy at the number below 905-536-4900. She'll be happy to assist with any pre-approval or live deals that you have. Now, disclaimer, this presentation is right now, it's not for you to make any financial decision, but you can use it as educational purposes and then go back to Sesh Sandy, who's the mortgage broker, licensed mortgage broker. He can help you with rates and deciding what's the appropriate mortgage product for your situation. Let's start with rent in Toronto right now, what we observed. So when we looked at 2019 up to basically last month, like January, February, we see that there was this spike. So it was really like the one bedroom and the two bedrooms were between maybe 22 to 27, 2,800 within that range, and dropped a little bit after COVID and then picked up like Q1 of 2021 and really spiked until I would say mid 2023, where it plateaued a little bit, and then there's a small drop, mainly for the two bedroom category right now, but looks like the one bedroom is still pretty much flat right now, if we can, as you can see here. Now for Mississauga, is the two bedroom any two bedroom apartments, if when we look at it, really spike. There's been a huge spike from 2022 to, I would say, Q1 of 2023 again, and we'll see why that happened in a few seconds. Whereas the one bedroom apartment has been pretty much consistent and is still, when we look at 2021 as a foundation, is still pretty much going up and plateauing right now, but still pretty high. Well, from like the mid, I would say 16, 1700 to where it is right now at like 25, 2200 maybe, still pretty much stable as is, because let's remember one thing is the causes of the rent spike here is it's clearly obvious that immigration post-COVID mainly played a huge role in that. And as we know, Mississauga is one of these areas where people love to go, especially for new immigrants, and became the area where people land. And when we look at this, what happened here is completely understandable of like how many people just like came into the country and landed in Mississauga, basically is causing that kind of rent spike. And we've seen the stories in the media about those, even in Toronto, those $9,000 rent back during COVID, and landlords doing basically what they wanted. And the whole thing was out of control, basically. So now, when we look at you as a home buyer, potential home buyer, there is a decision to make right now. Okay. Mm, Rent is pretty much stable. Let's assume that there's a one bedroom and you're still in a relationship, but there's no children, right? So we'll assume that it might be a condo, or let's say like a smaller apartment. Whereas for the two bed, that could be something a little bit bigger, right? Is the decision would be Is it justified to keep renting, or is it time to take the plunge and try to get your own place and get approved for a mortgage? The buy versus rent is like, it's an eternal question that every future home buyer has to struggle with. And we'll be here to provide some clarification on that based on data that we observed right now. So buying will make sense as long as the math works for you, right? Your budget has to be able to sustain that. And I have a small example that could help with that, right? So we look at a couple. Both are working salaried employees making approximately 60,000. So we have gross income of the family of the household of 120,000 gross. We looked at a 650,000 purchase price with minimum down payment. So how that works is the first 500,000 has to be 5% down, which is 25,000, and the remaining 150 is 650 minus 500,000 will be at 10%, and this that will be the down payment, right? So based on that, might not be 10%, will be approximately 8.3%, but you get the point. So the rate that we took based on the average of what we saw this week and end of last week was around 3.84. And I used the new rule amortization of 30 years based on the new rule that started recently. The monthly payments are at 29.59, including mortgage insurance. So that's very important. Let's go back to here quickly, and we see that that's Mississauga, and we'll see that the two-bedroom right now is around that range, plus or minus. Let's say 27, 2,800. So renting versus buying for Mississauga is quite interesting right now, is we're pretty much at the same level. Now, when we look at Toronto, Toronto already passed the 3,000 threshold for a two-bedroom. So it might still be beneficial right now to buy, depending on what kind of property that is. But that will leave that. That's a conversation you need to have with your real estate agent, and we can help with that. But again, choosing the right people to work with make sense. But again, based on the math and based on the qualification criteria that we had right now, looks like for both Mississauga and Toronto, the math makes sense right now. Again, we need to figure out closing cost separately, but that's a different conversation. Based on when we compare rent that you're paying right now and the mortgage payment that you could make if you get approved, when you get approved, looks like it still makes sense as the rate come down to get a mortgage and buy your own place right now. Two, what could help as well, that whole calculation, is if that house or that property you might be looking for has an option for a separate finished basement that you could rent. Let's assume that you bring in another $1,000 for a basement that could definitely help you get approved faster and get approved for a higher amount. We could maybe, if we run the math, push that to 700,000, which give us a better location, better property, better chance of appreciation as well in the future. So we need to bear that in mind. Now, to finish that, I'd like to as well look at from an investor point of view. Okay, is right now we saw I've read in the news that rates or rental amounts or rental cost are dropping, and it might be bad for real estate investors. But as we could see, Toronto and Mississauga was kind of like, small drop, but the right now it's still plateauing. Now, are you cash flow positive or are you in the red? That's a question that we'll have to review with Sesh once we review your portfolio and see like which property in the portfolio in the mix are doing well and which one you need to get rid of because you're bleeding cash, right? Part one, rent versus sell is, does it make sense to keep it because there is cash flow and there start being appreciation on that, and it makes sense to keep it for now. You can bankroll it, or you can at least relook at some rent, or the structure of where, like how you are renting it. We don't know. There are so many options. Now, as we can see, and that's Toronto, only Toronto over the last 6 months, I would say, is we saw that sales has been dropping for the like between September, like October until December. December sales are quite low because it's Christmas and then it's cold as well. It's always slow. But what's more interesting in that scenario is that discontinued listings have been dropping as well. There's been a slight, very small spike between, I would say, mid-December to mid-January, and then it dropped again, meaning is people are getting rid of condos. And what I found interesting in that is two locations in Toronto are really where we see the spike in listings, C01 and C08. So basically, from Roncesvalles, like beginning of King and Queen Street, end of Bloor West Village, up to the DVP, anything south of Bloor West. So that whole King West, Liberty Village, DVP, and all those condos, lots of listings right now in that area spiking. Okay, and this is something we built up internally. The team worked on that just to show us that there's been definitely is a an increase in listings and a drop in basically like less and less people took their listings out of the market over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 months. Again, the small November to December, maybe they thought there was some hope. Investors thought that could be some hope in the market, but overall, right now, lots of investors are dumping their condos because it really didn't make sense to begin with. But as sales are dropping, it doesn't make sense for them because of the uncertainty in the market. It doesn't make sense for them to keep those units anymore if they're not cash flowing. You never know if the maintenance fees are going up and as the rents are dropping, and tenants are just like walking out, is finding new tenants to replace old tenants and at lower rent is really a bad financial strategy for investors. Okay. Now what could happen as well? Let's remember that if you decide as an investor to keep the unit, and it's cash flowing okay, but there is potential, there is equity in the property that allows you to refinance, still making sure the cash flow is okay, and buy a new property. Let's assume there are lots of listings flooding the market. If you see that it makes sense for you to acquire another rental property and rent it and be profitable, again, we need to sit with Sesh and his team to run the math for the refinance part and the purchase part, which are two different things, two different ways of looking at the mortgage math. We need to look at that to make sure that overall you still come out better off. So give us a call, 905-536-4900. We'd love to run the math and explain what kind of strategy we could put in place for you, so that you can decide what to do in terms of your next moves. Um, so um, last few words, what can we add on that? There is lots of opportunities in the market for sure. Like I said yesterday, is I see lots of people will get scared because of the trade war and anything that the media keeps saying about real estate. I think is it's not what you see on the news, it's who you work with and what do they know, what kind of strategy they can put in place for you. That's what matters. That's what will separate is people who make money this year and people who basically listen to the news and status quo and do nothing and eventually lose on a really good year. There will be some good deals to be made. But again, like I mentioned a few days ago or yesterday, I'm not sure, is there will be a small window of opportunity. Understand that. And Tiff Macklem said that as well last week. There is eventually a risk of inflation. But before that, there will be rate cuts and everything in the market creating a risk will bring back inflation at some point and rates will have to increase. So if you can manage to squeeze in, get in the market before that and get some deals at a very good pricing rate and good cash flow and lock in tenants. So why not? Again, so don't wait. Waiting will be costly this year, that's for sure. If you see that and you can share it with people who need to learn about that and want to talk to us, please do that. If not, give us a call, 905-536-4900. Happy to sit and chat about what kind of strategy we can put in place for either your purchase of your new home, your first home, or your next investment property, or how we can recalibrate your debt or rental portfolio to make sure you're still cash flow positive.